So before we introduce our guest this evening, we are brought to you.
We are indeed.
By Sports Barista,
Coffee to Conquer, and Precision Hydration.
The sweat experts.
There we go.
Expertly done. And our guest, Mike James, he's just literally sat there like a champion.
Yeah.
So Mike is well known, by me on Facebook as the Endurance Physio. Yeah. Hopefully loads of you have been watching his stuff over lockdown. We've been sharing quite a lot of it. Yep. So Mike, good evening first of all.
Good evening. I am in awe of that intro.
Come on, it gets better every time. It's good. We want to be Norwich's Breakfast with Bob, don't we? You know, so soon enough we're going to have the bit along the bottom. We're going to have it all.
Tropical background and all sorts.
Absolutely. From Kona, live from Kona. Awesome. So Mike, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
And obviously you're called the Endurance Physio for a reason. So tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to be the Endurance Physio.
Yeah, cool. There's a little bit of luck involved in that story, but effectively I am in my mid-40s. In my teens, I was hopefully on a fast track to be a professional footballer. It's all I wanted to do. Growing up in South Wales, I was not the norm. Everyone was chasing careers in rugby and I wanted to be a footballer. And I went, okay. I was pushing there. I ended up on what would now be an academy, but back in my day it was a YTS scheme with a Premier League team at the time. But pretty soon realised that, you know, I was probably at the top of my Mount Everest as far as football ability went. But on reflection, in my late teens, the thing that was different, why I'd had some relative success with football, was fitness. In my early teens, I used to go running and, you know, there was times I remember sort of 16, 17, I'd play youth football in the morning, I'd play senior football in the afternoon, and then I'd go for a run on a Saturday night. I was rock and roll. I was the life and soul of the party in those days. So I still continued to play football after the dream had died, so to speak, but it was very much more just amateur and for fun. But I really turned my head to serious running. So this was in the mid-90s. Health and safety and everything else wasn't what it is today. So these were the days you could literally almost turn up on the day and do a marathon. So I did my first marathon at 17, which I'm pretty sure you wouldn't get away with these days. And then literally just followed anything that was a challenge became something I wanted to target. I set my own little business up at home doing personal training. Again, even in those days, most of my clientele was runners, athletes. You know, there was a few triathletes about, but not many in those days. And then in my early 20s, I joined the RAF. I'm not from a military family, not from a military background. I had no desire really to be in the military, but this job called a physical training instructor, where one of two things happened in your day. You either got paid to do exercise or you got paid to make someone else do exercise. It was the dream job. So fast forward sort of 17, 18 years later, I left in 2011, 2012. Within that 20 years almost that I was in, I'd moved through the physical training jobs. I'd gone into exercise rehab. I'd worked for a long period of time at a place called Headley Court with our injured servicemen. And my life had followed a parallel of going down the both training, coaching, but also rehab routes. The military were very good at supporting me educationally, so they put me through uni to do a couple of degrees. But also I'd gone into the endurance world. So there was this sort of parallel life I was living as an athlete and then as a coach or a therapist. I think if we pressed pause around 2012 time, I think I was up to 150 something marathons, lots of ultras, nearly 20 Ironman, a double Ironman, a triple Ironman. We'd swum the Channel, we'd cycled across continents. Anything that was around as a challenge. I became a dad quite late in life, sort of 8 years ago now. And one of the things that makes me glad I became a dad when I did was back in my 20s and early 30s, I wasn't vindictive or malicious to anyone, but I was very selfish in my time. So if there was an event or a race or just a training program I was on, it almost just took precedence over life outside work and stuff. Yeah. And work allowed me to train as much as I pretty much wanted anyway. When I left the military, I went to uni. I did a master's in physio. And then we moved back to Wales a few years ago. And I thought, right, I'll launch a business. I'd been doing this sort of quietly in the background alongside other jobs, but it was let's go big time when we get home and launch it. And that's when the Endurance Physio was born. And now that was almost luck. My aim had always been to be the triathlon physio, but there already was one. There was a running physio. There's 2 running physios at the time. I didn't really want to pigeonhole myself as swimming physio or cycling physio.
Yeah.
So the thing that sort of encapsulated me was endurance sports. I had experience and I'd worked with athletes in all the different sort of spectrums. And actually, although that was by luck that I became the endurance physio because other things weren't available, it's probably the biggest benefit accident I've ever made. Because what it's always done for me ever since is open doors in all the avenues of the endurance world. People don't see me as just specializing in one or the other. And then, that started growing. And then I guess as most of us have had to do, social media popped up. And if I'm honest, again, there was no desire to grow a business online or a big following or anything. It was the fact that in a typical day, I was telling 10 people the same messages. And then the next day, the same 10 messages. And the next day, the same 10 messages. Then these people would come back into clinic and they'd have forgotten half the things they'd been told or shown. So I suddenly thought, well, do you know what? If I start a Facebook page up and I film some of the stuff that I talk about, now it saves me time in clinic. I can signpost you to things. Also means you don't have to say you've forgotten, can't remember, because you can click on the link sort of thing. And then it's just...
We've got an intruder.
Yeah. The athletes in the room. But it's just spawned from there, really. And I could never envisage it going how it's done. I've been fortunate over the last sort of 5 or 6 years that it's taken me around the world teaching. It's taken me around the world speaking. It's taken me around the world treating as well. And now I have a really nice balance in my life right now. I am part of another company as well called Sports Injury Fix. That's my day job. But the Endurance Physio is a balance of a few hours a week treating these days, lots of online stuff, lots of teaching and coaching. And I've sort of found my sweet spot.
Yeah. Well, you can't get much bigger than Q&A with Wikiwiki, you know? It's pretty cool.
That's what it's all been geared up for.
That's it. All those years of training just for this moment. Awesome.
Cool. So I know you touched on it briefly, but you have got a massive endurance background. So talk to us about Ironman and double and triple Ironman.
Yeah, that's kind of what peaks. The channel swim is something, but we spoke to Sarah Thomas last week before last, and she's done it four times in a row.
Yes,
so she kind of trumps you on that one. Although one channel swim is still
epic,
way above what I'd want. But yeah, the sort of the
triple Ironman, and also about because you were due to do marathon days. I can never say
just say MDS.
So talk to us about that. Please.
Yeah, so the I guess my sometimes I think I sell myself short a little bit. I've always thrown the little comedy line in that I was never that fast, so I always went longer, which is something I'm trying to get away from because it's an excuse I start to see lots of athletes using these days. The fact of the matter was I was okay. The sport has moved on. My times now look back as relatively slow, but back in the day they were okay. But why I always moved to longer stuff was that whenever there was those events that popped up when people used to go, that's nuts, who would do that? That's the ones that always got my interest because I've spent a lot of time in uni and learning and doing stuff. The one thing I've never done, which I always thought I would have wanted to do, was like a psychology degree. Because the thing that always interests me is that psychological component. So I often say that some of the events that I do, which a lot of people sort of say, oh, that's nuts, how can you do that? Most people could do the things I do. They could do them better than me. The difference is it's the psychology of it. I think most things like a double Ironman, triple Ironman, channel swims, MDS to a lot of people, it's probably 95% psychological, 5% physiological. You can all train to get in the shape these events have, but most people won't commit the mental power to stay the course with them. Yeah. And that's where, again, most of them, this is the same theme. I did marathons for a long time. Then someone told me about ultra marathons. So I'll have a crack at one of them. You do like a 30 miler, for example, and someone tells you, oh, you can do these 50 milers, mind. All right, cool. I'll have a go at one of them. You do a 50. Someone says, did you know there's hundreds? All right, cool. I'll do that then. Well, did you know there's hundreds that go around a running track? All right, cool. I'll do that then. So it's always been that theme. So after about a dozen or so, I chased a corner slot for a long time. I chased a fast time for a long time. And after about a dozen attempts of that, I was like, well, what else is there now? Let's move on. And a friend of mine in the RF at the time, in the RF triathlon squad, was doing a double. He was just stepping up to do a double, and it was early 2000s. They weren't really heard of at the time. And I remember just chatting to him about it and just going, I really fancy this. This is just something that because again, with all the stuff like that, most people have a real disconnect between the actual amount of extra training you would do from a marathon, an Ironman, so on, so on. It's not double the training. It's a fraction more. You just tweak how you train for it.
Yeah.
So that's the subtle difference. And again, triple Ironmans is the same. Yes, it is 3 times the distance, but you're not going anywhere near the same speed. So the secret for those big events really is how you apply yourself in the training and preparation. So for example, in anything past an iron, like if you've got a double or a triple, then you know that you are going to be cycling through the night. So can you do multiple bike rides in a day in training, including getting up in the middle of the night when you're tired and fatigued and going back out on the bike or sitting on a turbo or a spin bike? That's the thing. It's not that you're going out to do 150, 200 mile bike rides. You're probably still only doing the 90 to 100 mile day that you would do big one for some other event. But what you're doing is doing 5 20-mile rides, fatigued, with little recovery in between a set period, or sticking a really long bike in on one day and a really long run on the next day. So it's always been the psychology of it rather than the physiology. Channel swim was the same. I remember in my Headley Court days, took a team. So I was selected from a cast of 1. They decided that they were going to make a team of injured servicemen were training to do a relay swim, a 6-man relay. And at the time, it was like they'd been approached by this organization to put the team together. Who do we know that swims, does triathlon, might want to do that? Or Mike, he's the only one we know. Mike, you're leading this team, sort of thing. And again, we did it against an Army team and a Navy team of really talented swimmers, like ex-junior international type stuff. And when you sit in after the swim over a cup of tea, having a piece of cake, and this mythical beast of the channel solo pops up, for example, these people, you just go, you're 10 times the swimmer I am, are just going, I wouldn't go near that. And then I sit there with my mentality going, all right, I want to do that then. Because again, with most of the longer things, when you mentioned something like the four crossings stuff, they're quite technical. Chloe McArdle's just gone again and done the new record now. No, Chloe's an ex-international swimmer and technically is brilliant. But a lot of the longer distance people, they're not really technically perfect. They can just keep going. That's the difference with it. And again, the psychology in that, to get out in France, turn around and get back in and swim back. That's the thing. How many people on that beach who may have set out for a 2-way would actually land on that beach, particularly if they've had a tough first crossing, and just go, that'll do, that's enough. But it's that psychology to turn around and just get back in and get going, because that's what makes them who they are. So that's where everything came from. MDS then this year was a bit of a strange one. I became a dad 8 years ago and almost happily put a self-imposed exile on endurance events for a while. It was the fact, mainly I just wanted to spend time with the kids as they grew up, but B, I'm not someone who wants to do anything half-hearted. So I didn't want to not perform or not train properly and get frustrated and angry at events because I wasn't in the shape I wanted to be in. So I just stepped away for a good 5 or 6 years, and the itch has come back. The weight's gone up, which is something else that's playing on my mind to get back into it. But also now I was doing all this stuff on social media, it almost became I need to practice what I preach a bit here. Right now, my message is going because I'm living off my past sort of achievements, but also, what would be better than me telling someone how things should be done, but just to show them. use myself as a case study almost. So MDS came along and I thought, cool, let's do that. Which the irony being, MDS is a really popular event for military people. And I got offered it so many times for free when I was in the military. But at the time, it just felt like too much of a busman's holiday. It was, a few days, camping rough, walking, sweating with packs on your back. I was like, well, I do this quite a lot anyway, so let's do something different. So yeah, that popped up on the horizon. I thought, right, let's go for it. And trained brilliantly, to be honest, from about September, October last year through to early March, late Feb, early March this year. Couldn't have gone better. Went really well. Really interesting learning journey. There was things I've done different in my 40s that I would have done different in my 20s and 30s, having to fit it in and around family and not being, I guess, although I may get back to that level, I'm one of those athletes where version 2.0 isn't actually an improvement on version 1.0. It's a step down. So I've had to really train differently, a bit like some of these boxers who come out of retirement in their 40s and get back in. They learn to train and handle their sort of art slightly differently. That's the journey I went on. And then obviously everything that we expected to happen happened, as far as COVID and events getting cancelled and stuff.
Yeah.
So at first it was rearranged. It was pushed back 6 months to September. And took a bit of downtime, got back into the training and just wasn't feeling it, to be honest. I'd done the slog, I'd got into shape. I was doing the training again, but it wasn't what it was first time around. And I guess as well, probably, May, June time, part of me just saw it probably isn't going to happen in September again. So I got to the point where I was actually then hoping it got cancelled again, because I just didn't want to turn up in the shape I was in July time. And then by coincidence, I made the decision mid-July time to defer. I just sort of reached out to the organisers and said, look, I know we've sort of deferred, but can I go again for April 21? And they were cool about it. That all went through. And then it was only a matter of a week or two later, they announced it was cancelled again. So where we're at with that now is we've ticked along for a few weeks, well, a couple of months now, actually. And within the next 3 or 4 weeks, it's time to get back on the wagon and go again for that, again in anticipation for April. But we just don't know where the world will be, obviously, in another 6 months' time. But and it's interesting because although I said a few minutes ago, I thought the program for MDS went really, really well last year. Having a second bite of the cherry, there are things I'll tweak. There are things I'll do differently. There's things I won't do that I did, and there's probably a few things I'll add in. What probably will change is I'll be a bit more ambitious in what my targets are. Yeah. I was very conservative coming off the back of a long layoff almost to know what I could do. It was just about finishing, but now I won't announce it. I won't make it some public knowledge thing, but in my head, I'll have a few times and a few positions that'll be different targets to last time.
Nice.
Awesome.
So, firstly, have we got a dog under control?
He's out. He's out. He's been kicked out.
Schoolboy, Bob doesn't do that. Mid-interview, getting up, squeaking around the ball. So, yeah, I guess all guns blazing for April then.
Yeah, that's what it is now. But again, tempered enthusiasm in the fact that we just don't know where we'll be. So we'll see, but we'll go again.
And what experiences have you learned from doing all of these events that you can pass on to your athletes and the people that you teach?
Yeah, great question. So I think the interesting thing here is with the day job with Sports Injury Fix, we've taken teams of therapists to big events like the National Running Show and the Run Fit Expo. And we've always surveyed some of the runners and athletes that come to see us. And the number one thing categorically that athletes tell us that they look for when they're looking for a therapist is someone who understands the sport. Yeah. So I guess that's the big power of my background. You don't need to be an endurance athlete to be a great therapist with endurance athletes. And likewise, not everyone who does really well with them. But it certainly helps if they know that you understand the sport. Now, what I always say to therapists wanting to work with it, who may not have the background I do, is is, look, you don't need to become an expert at it. You don't need to go out and run a marathon, but spend a little bit of time learning about it. I had a patient who I saw virtually a couple of months ago who got in touch with me completely out of the blue, just saying, I wouldn't mind working with you. Was an international ultimate frisbee player. I mean, literally,
Nice.
I didn't even know that was a sport at the time. So lo and behold, it is. And literally all I did for an hour one night then was jump on YouTube, look at some articles, just watch a game or two, and start to understand the demands of the sport, the movement patterns, the sort of physiology involved with it. Again, I wasn't trying to learn it to degree level or anything, to become a coach in any capacity, but it just allowed me an insight. So my background probably allows me to have that insight. But then beyond the physical side, what it really allows me to do is just empathize, understand, appreciate the psychology and emotions that go into some of these events.
Yeah.
And therefore, when I'm working with someone, then potentially I may manage a patient slightly different to someone else just by understanding what we're trying to get to, where we're coming from, and all the stuff that's involved with it. I'll certainly handle, I don't handle every marathon runner the same. I don't handle everyone training for an Ironman the same. I might handle the same person different year on year, or I may handle two different people. A really good example last season, Ironman Wales. I had two athletes with two very similar injuries at very similar stages of the race. One, the whole dynamic of their approach to the race and everything about it lent to a really sensible conversation that reset our goals, refocus on the target for the race, and so on and so on. The other one who I was slightly more concerned about as far as, and I hate stopping people race, and I'll always try and modify it if we can, but ultimately was someone who if they'd been happy to withdraw from the race, I'd have probably supported them. Yeah. But the backstory to it was that her mum had died recently from cancer and had been a triathlete, and she wanted to get into the sport and finish this Ironman as a tribute to her mum. The emotional sort of investment of her to that race, there was no way she was not going to do that race. And having gone to that gritty wall myself a few times and sort of understood that side of it, then we did things that were slightly probably non-traditional to help her get to the start line and across the race. So that would always be the thing. It's just understanding the people and the way it is and how people need to apply themselves for these events.
Definitely. 100%.
Yeah,
definitely.
Agree.
So a signed clip from the Simon Ward podcast that made us laugh is endurance athletes are lazy. Now, a lot of people watching this are probably going, what? I swim, cycle and run lots. So what exactly did you mean by endurance athletes are lazy?
Yeah, brilliant. That so that's a clickbaity soundbite that I use on my course that I teach. Just because it gets attention and it allows people to listen to the nuance of the message. So effectively what I mean by that, and it is very tongue-in-cheek, is that despite doing all of this training, despite being very active and committing themselves to things, then effectively what we're always trying to do is find the shortcut. We're always trying to find the path of least resistance to get us there. Now, whether that is lighter bikes, disc wheels, TT bikes, different wetsuits, use of tech, shoes, any fast track for success is what we tend to try and find.
Yeah.
And of course, these things are all viable options. They're decent strategies for most people. But a lot of the time, it's about the timing. We tend to put the cart before the horse a lot of the time. We look for those marginal gains that have been, put in the spotlight by the likes of Team Sky and GB Cycling. But what we always try and do a lot of the time is chase that 5%. And we haven't really knuckled down and got the 95% nailed first.
Definitely.
So the bigger message from that sort of soundbite is let's get the big things done first. I recorded a podcast last night. I was chatting on the weekend at a webinar, again, me and my bloody soundbites, but I put a webinar out on the weekend called Should You Fit the Bike to the Body or the Body to the Bike?
Yep.
And the point of that, which I said on this podcast last night, was buy in a component for your bike that's 5 grams lighter when you're carrying 10 kilos of extra weight. seems
Yeah.
a flawed plan.
Yeah.
But we all know that we can go out and spend money and get a lighter component, but there's time, energy, commitment, and it's bloody hard work to drop 10 kilos in weight.
Yeah.
So that's the message of that. It's let's just do the things that make the bigger difference first. And then all of the stuff we've mentioned, all the stuff we've just sort of jested about as far as being this lazy shortcut, they become real viable things to go after then. But, again, I guess the big one right now is the vapor flies. You think how many people now have gone out and thrown 250 quid at a shoe to make them 4% quicker. Yeah, their training's probably all over the place. Their sleep's all over the place. Their nutrition's probably over the place. They're probably, again, some of them carrying a little bit of weight, not as mobile, not as strong, not as conditioned as they could be. So there's all of those things that, they're hard work things. But actually, I can ping 250 at a pair of shoes and make me different, make me better. I can't remember which study it is now, but it's one of Rich Blagrove's work in the last couple of years that strength train at 12 to 14 week strength training program twice a week. On average, off the back of that meta-analysis, I think the average improvement in efficiency and economy in a runner was 8%. So that's double what the Vaporfly does for you. So let's go and do strength training, a consolidated, consistent strength program, and then by Vaporflies, maybe we're 10 to 12% better then.
Yeah.
Now we're making huge differences. If you're trying to get a park run under 20 minutes or a sub 40 10K or whatever you're chasing, 10% is probably going to do it for most of us. So that's all that message was.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we see it all the time, don't we, in the athletes that we coach, There's some that just commit to the grind and like doing the extra bits, but there's some that will literally swim, bike, run, and then wonder why they're breaking to pieces and not hitting targets and just not coping with it. So yeah, it's something that we just made us laugh because it resonates with us as coaches and therapists and stuff. So
I've definitely had some raised eyebrows and some squeaky bums in the chairs on courses when I dropped that one in.
But people just I think struggle to grasp the concept that the swim, bike, run, and then something else you put up loads of good stuff, but stuff like better to be 10% undercooked than 1% overcooked. All of these little things, they're just very simple to understand, but actually do the basic stuff right, and then the rest will come.
And again, it's important when you mentioned about my background. I'm really honest with this stuff. I've read the science, I've read the research, I've studied this stuff, but the reason it resonated with me so much is because I made these mistakes myself. I've raced overcooked, I've over-raced, I've got training programs wrong, I've raced with injuries I shouldn't have. So it's the marriage of me understanding the science and the knowledge bit, but also going, well, do you know what? It took me 10 years to learn that.
Yeah,
definitely. If social media had been around in the 90s, early 2000s, the way it is today, then I wouldn't be very good online now because I'd have been showing you all the mistakes I was making back then. So it is, it's an honesty call from me that I'm referring to myself on that one as well. As well as, I'm not trying to stand on a pedestal and preach that, I always get it right, you guys get it wrong. I know best. It's look, been there, done it myself, guys. And I guess that's where the podcasts and some of the things don't have that nuance. If it's a workshop or a course and you're in the room with me, you'll see my gestures and my context of lines like that, where it is very much, look, guys, here's a picture of me DNFing when I was trying to chase a PB because I just blew a gasket in training type thing. So yeah.
But that's a great thing. But that's, I think, why I read a question on Facebook that was saying, what's the benefit? Why bother having a coach? And it's that exact reason. It's not to repeat the same mistakes that we've made ourselves as athletes. We've been there. Race when we shouldn't have done, gone in massively undertrained and tried to perform. The whole lot. Everyone's been there, haven't they? So
I think I saw that thread yesterday. It was, should I get a coach? Is it necessity or something?
That's right. Yeah.
And I followed it as well. And the things with those things, I've coached people in the past. I'm back in my teens when I was doing personal training stuff. For plenty of people stand in front of me and say the only reason I'm paying you is because I want to outsource my motivation or outsource some accountability. I don't need you. That's what I'm, that honesty is fine with me. I'm like, all right, cool. Because what it also means is you'll do the sessions that you will probably skip on because you've got to reply back to me. Yeah. But likewise, if I'm putting something in recovery-wise, rest days, if I'm saying to you, listen, looking at these numbers or just us chatting, I want to back off a bit from the plan, then they stick to it. So, or you hope they stick to it. But yeah.
It's always an interesting one. Yeah. So, going to put the sort of endurance physio under a bit of pressure here. Yeah. So we want some top tips. So there's no point having someone like you on here and not deal with some, you know, sporting injuries and issues that people quite honestly face all the time. Yeah. So triathletes, common injuries, we just want your kind of top three kind of ideas on how best to, you know, treat, manage, whatever. So we'll start with an easy one of shoulder pain.
Yep. Yeah, cool. So I love, these are the things, you know, that I try to do in my videos, is just this short bang, bang, bang sort of answers. So, so some of them probably will leave some of the listeners confused because they're not really answers, some of them. It's more something to think about. Certainly with the shoulder stuff, which is common in a lot of swimmers and a lot of the cyclists and triathletes, then the first thing to do with shoulder stuff is understand the shoulder is a bit of a weird and wonderful area. There's many possible diagnoses that it could be. So if your therapist, or likewise, if you're listening and you're a therapist, don't get bogged down too much in trying to find a specific diagnosis, because often we can't. And as long as it's not traumatic, like a bike crash or something like that, then most of the time, a similar rehab and treatment plan will fix whatever it is. So that would be my number one stuff. Don't worry about the diagnosis. Just understand most things get better the same way. Tip number two, big one for the shoulder, is to make sure the neck's clear and not involved. Seeing so many swimmers and cyclists, particularly ones who are in that tuck position, that a lot of the shoulder issues or perceived shoulder issues are actually neck issues in origin. We've got a lot of the nervous system originates in the neck that comes down to supply the arm and the upper limb. So make sure that you get the neck cleared and checked, that it's not the problem, because I've seen so many people who've been overtreated for way too long and problems that should have resolved much quicker than they have because we've just not thought it's coming from the neck. And again, you know, a quick 10-minute assessment will clear the neck and we can zoom in again on the shoulder. And then I think for most of it, you know, it's hard to rest an upper limb. We can avoid things a little bit better in the lower limb. So when it comes to rehab, often rehab for the shoulder stuff tends to be a little bit aggravating. So my third and final tip for any sort of shoulder pain would be that little snacks of exercise, little bite-sized chunks of exercise multiple times a day. The shoulders probably prefer that than actually just a beast in for 20, 30 minutes and really trying to force rehab, which sometimes we can do a bit more in the lower limb, but the upper limb, because we never really not using the upper limb day to day, just little bite-sized chunks.
Cool.
Happy with that?
There you go. Very important.
All right, let's have a look. Where is my list? Okay, so we've got ITB syndrome now.
Yeah, nice one. Let's get controversial on number one. Do not foam roll or stretch it. That'd be my number one top tip.
Well, unless you've got, I can't remember the exact poundage that you need to stretch it, but it's something like 1,000 newtons or something. Yeah. Again, for that one, a bit more nuance to the answer. It's not I'm saying don't do it. It's just don't think that's the answer. Too many people are told by too many other people that the answer to any ITB problems is to stretch it, foam roll it, rub it, poke it, push it. And we categorically know that's not really the cause or the answer for it. So the real answer, which would be tip 2, is to start looking up at the hip and the pelvis and that sort of whole area above the knee, top of the thigh, and start addressing some of the control or strength issues that you're most likely going to find up there. That's probably the real answer. The ITB is connected to some of those muscles that live up in the top, and they're really the cause and consequence and the answer also. The third and final tip for ITB would be to be vigilant
of aggravating activities. So a lot of the time, just by modifying the things that are making it worse, we can have a serious nosedive in symptoms. So it's not necessarily saying stop running, stop cycling, stop doing the things that are aggravating. But if you categorically know that my pain gets worse after 5 miles, then a sensible approach would just be to run within 5 miles, or avoiding certain terrains or types of terrain, or certain type, whatever it is. So modify the activity will often make a big difference with pain.
Yeah. Do you know, I just had a light bulb moment. Do you remember when we were on our England Athletics?
Oh, don't. Yeah.
So we were given, I'm not going to say where we were or who it was, but on this course, so I've been a sports therapist for 16, almost 17 years now. And we were all given stretch cards, so we had to demonstrate. And the stretch card I got was ITB. And I looked at it and I was like, Lauren knows me now. She knows me well enough. She looked at me and said, what's wrong? I was like, well, that's just not proper. So the guy was like, right, Rob, demonstrate yours. And I was like, I'm not being funny, but this isn't going to do that. No, it is. No, honestly, it's not. And we went back and forth. And I was like, look, I'm not going to demo it. Can I have a different stretch? So they gave me a different stretch in the end because like, man, I'm just not happy with it. And he kept coming back to me all day long. He's like, oh, so, you know, what do you do? And what do you know about this? Mate, it was funny.
And again, that's, you know, because that's that sort of strategy problem that we're facing. I'm, you know, something I always talk about is the multi, I used to write back in the day, I used to write for some of the national sort of running magazines, and they'd ask you to write on a topic. You'd write on the topic, and by the time you open the magazine and look at it in print, they've changed everything that you've written. And it's the whole reason I ended up stopping doing it. But when you flick the page over and you see what's being sold on the next page, you understand now why they've changed what you wrote to fit the narrative of what's coming up. And it's, you know, it's $1 billion industry, things like the sports rehab market and the injury market. So that's one battle we're fighting. But the other battle fighting is, you think of that course now, how many people go on an England or Welsh athletics course to become a run leader or whatever it is?
Absolutely.
And then they all go back to their courses and they're going, right, listen, ITB stretch, hamstring stretch. You have to stretch beforehand. You have to stretch afterwards. And that, like we've seen in recent months with our numbers and the sort of way that coronavirus will just go mental if you give it the slightest chance to, then that's how that message spreads with this bad practice stuff. And actually, it's really bizarre because, yes, we're trying to help people with things like this and when we put things online, but actually we should be turning the barrels towards people like England Athletics and saying, can I come up and chat to you guys and your coaches about the syllabus that you teach? Because that's probably going to make a bigger difference. But, you know, we know there's a lag for those non-therapists listening, that there's something like a 17-year lag between research coming out and then it in the mainstream. And that's probably compounded by another 17 years of outdated beliefs and myths and norms. You know, how many run club leaders, probably changing now, but certainly when they first came out 10, 15 years ago, the average club coach was probably in their 50s. I've been around from the first running boom of the 70s, 80s, where it was all stretch. You know, you do 5-minute jog, you stop, you stretch. Now, these people have got guru-like status in their running clubs.
Yeah.
And that's the message. And they're not, you know, nobody's doing it with bad intentions. Nobody's trying to pass on bad messages. It's just the outdated mantras and beliefs that we struggle to try and break down.
Definitely.
100%.
That's why I hate going to them courses and telling them what I do, because it's always, oh, well, static stretch here and hold this for this long. And I was just like,
no,
it's not. But you have to play along. You know, you've got to tick the boxes sometimes.
No, you do. So when we just before we moved back to Wales, I took I went back in the NHS for a year or two while we were waiting to move home, and within about 2 weeks of being there, I had to go and do a manual handling course. And I mean, I turned up on that course, and you know, probably like you were, but on steroids. About what rubbish are you teaching here? That's not true. That's not true. And bless him, this guy teaching the course was just like, look, I'm just teaching the syllabus. That's I remember going back and proper kicking off about it to my bosses. And it was funny then. It was probably 6 months later, and there was a batch of us about to go back on this manual handling, and I hadn't given it two thoughts, but my boss pulled me in. I just went, right, listen, Mike, do you think you're going to change the policy of the trust today on their manual handling? And I went, no. Okay, so go, shut up, listen, do what they say, and come back and start seeing people again. And I just went, that's everything I'm not, but you're right for now. Just go and jump through the hoop and then try and address it later on somewhere.
That's exactly what Lauren says to me. She gives me the look, the kind of, just leave it, keep your mouth shut, sit in the corner and don't say anything. That's
but
it.
Again, you know, what you should do is then there'll be a time when you're older and you're sitting down there and, you know, like I've got very philosophical since becoming a dad and stuff. And I sit there now thinking, you know, there's probably going to be a time 10, 15 years from now where I'm trying to pass something on to my kids to stand their ground, to be true to their convictions, to do the things, chase the dreams they want to chase. And actually, as you know, dramatic as it sounds, challenging those things and being yourself and fighting that fight is what you should be doing, A, to sleep well at night, but B, because if you start having these conversations later in life with your kids or whoever it is you're around, you might end up taking on staff who are junior, and then as you're trying to give them your experience, then you'd be a hypocrite if you haven't done those things.
Yeah,
definitely.
100%.
But yeah, but it's good. It is good. I like it. So leading on and going back to the ITB is our next little injury. So runner's knee, obviously very closely linked, but you know, what would you say?
Yeah, and again, you know, it is, there's those people who think of ITBS as runner's knee. And I guess what we're talking here is that patellofemoral pain on the front. So again, the first point would be just an educational point, that the whole concept around runner's knee, that anterior knee pain, would be that it's caused by a misalignment or an imbalance of muscle strength, particularly with the VMO, the vastus medialis muscle, which is your inner quad. And I still see today so many protocols and therapists of people, all right, could we address the muscle imbalance at the knee? So the probability is that it's not VMO and it's not a muscle imbalance. So try to withdraw yourself from any conversations that you see as far as those things. Now, doing something to that may still help with your symptoms. So one of the classic techniques that still goes on today, something called McConnell taping, where we would tape your patella into a new position to offload it. And again, that may well help. And I've used it for some people in races. I've used dynamic tape sometimes in races. Definitely can ease someone's pain. But what I am not saying to them is that your knee was in a bad position and now it's in a good position. All I'm saying is the way your knee mechanics were working were irritating something and giving you pain. We've offloaded that. If I continue to tape you in that place for long enough, then I'm probably going to piss something else off and you'll have pain somewhere else.
Yeah.
But for now, to get you across the finish line or to get you through these last 6 weeks of training, then it may work. But again, if you come to see me in October, 6 to 9 months out from your A race, there's no tape coming out. Now we're going to have a chat about addressing the causes and fixing it that way. Again, similar. It is similar to the ITB stuff. And again, therefore, the treatment to me is also very similar. Let's go up that chain around the glutes, the pelvis, the hip muscles, and address whatever we're finding up there, because the probability is, I remember getting taught a long time ago by an old mentor of mine that, and of course, you know, if you fall off your bike and you land on your knee, or if you're playing rugby and someone tackles you from the side, then of course there is trauma to the knee. But a lot of the time in things like endurance sports, then the knee, he used to say, the knee was the victim in the middle. That normally there was an issue at the ankle or an issue at the hip, and the knee was what was the sort of copping it in the middle. Now, there's plenty of ways that's not fully true, but actually in some of these conditions, often, have a look up and below the joint and see what's going on. And then the third one is that for most of these things, particularly the ITB and particularly for runner's knee, then some sort of combined approach with some education, some exercise, and maybe something else can often help. The big one with this one is always orthotics. You know, I had runner's knee, I got orthotics and my pain was fixed. So again, it's just understanding that the reason an orthotic may help is because we're offloading things that are annoyed and irritated.
Yeah.
It's not that it was in a bad foot position and now it's in a good foot position, or the wrong one and now the right one. All we've done is send those forces and those sort of stresses of the impact work to somewhere else. So by all means, you may well think an orthotics worked, but it's a short-term fix only. Yeah. And when we've addressed the bigger problems, we should be able to whip the orthotic out and let you go back to it. Therefore, if you are being led down the line of orthotics, be cautious that it's not being sold as a long-term fix, and B, an expensive fix. You do not often need custom orthotics and real, fancy analysis stuff to get them some £200 orthotic, when something off the shelf or made for, 5-6 quid probably does enough to offload it. But again, all depends on the stage of your season, where you're at with your race prep, and how we're going to do from there.
Yeah,
definitely. Okay. Oh, these are getting good now, aren't they? Sorry, shin splints, another fan favorite.
Yeah, I guess what I would say to all the listeners here, of all of these issues, if we cheat a little bit and say shin splints is a stress fracture or any sort of stress fracture of the lower limb, then although this is probably the least common, it's the more serious and the ones that therapists and athletes need to be considering more serious. So my first tip for any sort of stress fracture would be take it seriously. There are some really important things we need to consider as far as people's medical histories, things like their calcium, vitamin D levels, their energy availability. We used to be aware of something called the female athlete triad, where bone mineral density was affected, and we've evolved that to something called RED-S, relative energy deficiency in sport, because we know it doesn't just affect females, it affects men, and it's not just to do with menstrual cycles and other things. But these are often the cause of stress fractures or where shin splints is this sort of bone stress problem, then it's the low safe end of the spectrum that leads to the stress fracture. Be very cautious with lower limb stress fractures, particularly in high risk areas. So the two big ones are the neck of femur, so right up in the hip, and the navicular, the bone in the foot. Reason being, both of these have very poor blood supplies. Therefore, if we fracture these, the healing rate is really impaired. We can get, in the worst case, something called avascular necrosis, where that bone dies because of lack of blood supply, and we start to end up in a world of crappy rehab and a world of struggling to get back to any sort of good stuff in any reasonable time scale. So that would be my first one. And again, listeners, don't let that scare you now. Don't suddenly walk around, being really fearful that you're going to pick up stress fractures, or that every pain is a stress fracture. Most people don't get them, and most people get better from them, but they are things we have to be careful of. Tip 2 would be just allow your body to heal from these things. It's fantastic to accelerate rehab, but we can't accelerate nature, and nothing can be accelerated faster than natural healing of a bone. So, we're probably going to be 12 weeks minimum with this stuff. It's probably going to take time, and you just have to trust that process. And again, if there's therapists listening, that's the same for them. We know the pressure that we can often feel under to get someone to some race or to get someone to something. Part of my success is that people come to me because they know the last resort for me is to stop them doing stuff. I pick up a lot of clients because they've been to see others who've told them to stop, and they know that I'll probably try to modify as much as I can. So if you come and see me and I'm saying to you, need to stop, then it's because I'm a little bit concerned about something like this. And then I guess the third one, which fits in, take it seriously, recover properly. But the thing I often see mistaken sometimes when either recovery and return is delayed or there's a recurrence, is the rehab hasn't been done properly. So we often are quite good at getting people's pain to settle right down. But then we tend to throw them straight into this sort of return to run program or just some really high impact stuff. I'm a big advocate in this injury of things like hopping, skipping, jumping, low level plyometric stuff, just to really start loading up the bone well before we start getting people running again. You know, I've seen loads of people pick up injuries actually in lockdown because they started skipping at home. You know, gone from nothing to doing a lot of skipping and not realized the impact forces of, you know, you're skipping. If you get really competent at skipping and you're doing, you know, a decent level of speed of skipping, then you're probably slinging 2, 3, 4 times your body weight through those joints. That's as much as running for a lot of people. But likewise, in a rehab plan, that's a really nice way to gently start getting people back into it. So it's, and from our point of view, it's just that education thing of saying to them, look, you know, this could be serious. So we're going to take it serious. We're going to rehab it slow. We're going to listen to the body, and we're going to take a bit longer to get you back potentially. But when you're back, you're back. And when you're back, you're confident you're back.
Definitely. 100%. So we kind of covered 2 in 1 there.
Yeah.
So we'll skip stress fracture and move straight on to the final one, which is the plantar fascia. So it's a really nasty itis, plantar fasciitis.
Yeah. And again, probably, like I mentioned, I've done a lot of these things through lockdown, and it's probably the one that's come up the most. It's probably the thing that most people want to know about. It's also probably the one most people are misinformed about the most. So in no particular order, because I was writing these down thinking, actually with these 3, I can't really think of one that's more important than the others. I think from an awareness point of view, similar to what we chatted about some of the other stuff, then the traditional things that most people get thrown at them, taping, icing, rolling on a golf ball, stretching, massage, acupuncture sometimes, they all may help with your symptoms. They all may calm stuff down, but they should not be seen as the fix for this stuff. Now, that's not me saying don't have them, don't do them to yourself. But what happens a lot of the time is we remove someone from the aggravating activity, do this stuff for 6 to 8 weeks. Someone's pain-free, and then we sling them back in thinking it's fixed. And nearly every time they're coming back to you with the recurrence. So be aware of what percentage of the actual fix those are. It's not a lot. The big thing, I guess, if it was what is the thing you should be doing then? It's load. There's some real good evidence on this stuff now that the only way to get this better is to do a really specific program. Something, I've got videos on my Facebook of it, but it's something called the Rathlift program. And there you basically just want to put a rolled up towel underneath your toes and then do a calf raise. And it's a really slow calf raise. It's about 6 seconds repetition. But there are now, I know there's one out called the plantar pad, and there's another one out called the fasciitis fighter, where guys have got and designed like little devices which are quite cute and good at doing rather than the towel. But it's a 12-week, really progressive, heavy loading program that can often be uncomfortable. And it's one of the few injuries that I'm a big fan of saying to someone, look, this may or may not get worse. If it does, it's one of the few things I want you to keep doing. We normally remove someone or amend their programs if it's causing more pain. We're not really sure yet why it gets worse or why it doesn't get worse with some, but keep going. And then I guess the third one would be a word of warning. If loading it and strengthening it is the real answer and all the other stuff is okay as long as it's done with the strengthening, then just be aware of some information out there along like that there's a perfect shoe to fix this, that you overpronate and now you need extra shoe.
Yeah.
Be cautious of things like people wanting to stick steroid injections in them. Yeah. Sadly, I see it too much. If you go to your GP with this first, lots of them will want to stick a needle in it. And again, one, you don't need it. And I'm a big fan of don't have any invasive treatment where someone sticks something in your body unless you absolutely need it. There is a time and a place for it sometimes. If everything else is failing, then if it's all we need to do to get you going to do the right stuff, maybe. And again, then the other one that, again, has a place and is growing in popularity, but is still really expensive, is Shockwave.
Yeah.
So Shockwave can really help this. I've used it on some, but my mantra or my rules for Shockwave in a plantar fascia is that you've done the full 12-week rehab plan without success.
Yeah.
That I won't even consider doing it until that point. But again, you know, you'll see, and it's not everybody, and I'm not going to name anyone, but you will see therapists that the first session, someone comes to see them with a 8-week history of plantar fascia is 3 sessions of Shockwave a week at 200 quid a pop for the next 5 weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
And, you know, even then you're like, well, look, the guidelines are saying that 3 to 4 sessions should be a maximum exposure at any time anyway. So even if you went once a week for 4 weeks, it's still overkill in my book.
Yeah.
But the ones who are saying, you know, it's 80 quid a session, or you can have 5 for 300 quid or whatever the deals they want to stick in. You know, there's other stuff. And again, if they're doing that with the rehab plan, I'm probably not going to have a stroke over it. But likewise, you'll see people who are just doing that and not doing anything else. And
No.
so that would be the big thing. But loading it up is the answer.
It's one of those things, like you say, it's a combination of everything, but the main thing that it all stands back to is that, you know, mobility, strength. That's it, isn't it? You know, get the shoes are important, the stretching is important, the strength is important, but it's all got to be done together, you know. It's not one fix all.
90+% of the time in the endurance world, when it's a non-traumatic injury, you know, if someone walks in to see you with their arm dangling down because they've crashed their bike and they've, you know, broken their collarbone or something, that's different. But 90% of those just, you know, what we would call overload or overuse injuries, if you sit down, take 10 minutes and chat to them about their history over the last 3 to 6 months, 9 times out of 10, you'll find the cause. Whether it's a training problem, whether it's something to do with life or work or other stuff, they often reveal themselves. But most people just zoom in on the problem. They zoom in on the last week or two, or they zoom in on what's happened since the pain came on. Yeah. You know, and I've seen loads in lockdown, loads of people where, you know, I've not done any different mileage to what I did before lockdown, but now my back's killing me. Okay, tell me about your training in lockdown then. Well, I did the same thing, 3 rides a week, blah, 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 blah. Okay, yeah. On what? Well, on my spin bike. All right. So you thought you could translate the same amount of time that you've spent the whole winter building up on a road bike onto a turbo that's just sitting in your garage, or onto a spin bike, and get away with it. Now, sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But if I had just looked and gone, yeah, do you know what? Seems to be fair. It doesn't seem any big spikes or any big troughs in his training, but there was that one little thing, you know, or people have gone, well, actually done less mileage. Okay, well, it doesn't make sense to pick up injuries doing less mileage. Tell me about the mileage you've done. Well, you know, work's been tough and we've had homeschooling and everything. So rather than my 5 miles easy, I've smashed 3 miles really hard 4 days a week. All right. So what you've really done is you've upped your intensity considerably for a prolonged period of time. Oh, yeah, I hadn't really thought of that. Okay. So actually, we'll help you with the problem. We'll help you with the injury. But the fix here really is just to go back to an easier training load, give yourself a bit of time to adapt to it. And then if that's what you want to continue doing, refocus your training for that new goal, or just go back to what you were doing before. So, you know, spending time, every appointment I do now, I'm lucky enough to be able to give them an hour. And, you know, I talk to them for the first 30 minutes. Some of them, if you've never seen me before, look at me as if, holy shit, when are you going to start doing stuff to me? When are you going to start testing me? When are you going to... And I have to say to some, look, you know, most of the answers you're going to tell me. You might not realize it, but you're going to tell me the answers if we just spend a bit longer time talking about it, which means we need to do less tests, which means we can be more specific, which means we can get to the answer and the fix a lot quicker.
Definitely. So, Mike, we've taken up loads of your time, so I'm going to skip on to the last little bit. I don't know, maybe I gave it away, you hadn't noticed. So we've got a Theragun to your head.
I like it.
They're everywhere at the moment, massage guns, aren't they? So you're only allowed to do or prescribe 3 strength exercises, 3 stretches, and 3 bits of equipment or rehab tools to help an endurance athlete or yourself stay fit, healthy, and as injury proof as possible.
Cool. Right. So
no pressure.
The stretch bit won't take long. So strength conditioning wise, categorically number one, calf and soleus work. It's the biggest cause of issues in runners and especially in triathletes I see as well. It's a really neglected area. So a single leg calf raise with a straight leg and a bent leg would be my number one every day of the week. Nice. Number two for that would be, it's a bit of a cop out, but any sort of double-legged multi-joint, multi-muscle group. So I would be quite happy saying a squat or a deadlift or a push press or any of those type of big compound movements. Bang for your buck, lots of muscles, lots of joints working at the same time. And then the third one would be a single leg variation of that. So something like a rear leg elevated deadlift or a Bulgarian or something like that. Even a single leg sort of just toe touch, just something. So we've got heavy double leg, relatively heavy controlled single leg, and then those calves, getting them going.
Cool.
All
right.
Stretches. So you'd probably have to have Theraguns to my kids' heads to get me to give you any stretch stuff. We've chatted about it before. It's a big spoiler alert. I've spoken at conferences. I've spoken online. I've done webinars on my beliefs around stretching, what it does and doesn't do. And therefore, I'm not an advocate for it. There's a blog on my Facebook page from the National Running Show just a couple of months ago where I literally spent 45 minutes saying stretching is dead. So what I would say on there, because I did think about it, I thought that's a cop-out to say I'm not going to do any. But I guess what I would say, which is all three in one, like I've alluded to before, the only reason I have an issue with stretching is because most of us recreational athletes don't have a lot of time available, and we tend to waste the valuable time we've got doing just stretches. So, and again, the calf's a really good one. When I said about the calf raises as the strength exercise, most of them tell me, oh, my calves are really tight. And yeah, they'll feel tight, but they're fatigued and weak. They're not tight. So do your strength exercise, not your stretch. Now, if you're doing your calf strengthening and afterwards you want to stretch, have a stretch. If your quads feel tight and you've done your training's right, your rest is right, your recovery right, you're doing some strength work and you want to stretch your calves, your quads, stretch your quads. So I would say I don't have an issue with any stretch as long as people are doing it first, barring the ITB.
So I've got to say, I kind of stitched you up at there because I knew we'd get some sort of reaction. So I thought, save it to the end.
I knew, I had a feeling that one was in for
But it's interesting, isn't it? You know, it's one of those things. Like, if it makes you feel better, do it. And you know, if it doesn't, we're not going to beat you up around there.
And again, you know, many years ago, when I sort of really went quite hard-nosed about it, I lost loads of patients. I'll tell you a really quick story where I was working in a clinic at the time for someone else, and there was two treatments they could have. They could come in for a consultation or they could come in for sports massage. And there was only physios working there, and the physios used to do the sports massage. So this guy comes in, he booked himself in for sports massage. So he comes in, he lies down, I'm working on his legs. It's probably like 10 years ago now or something. And like, you know, what are you training for? Oh, ultramarathon, a sort of fell race ultramarathon right up my street. So I'm chatting to him, you know, blah, 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 as you do when you're treating. And straight away, it just stinks that, you know, I'm rubbing this guy's legs going, there's nothing wrong with your legs. Now, we hadn't come in for a recovery. He wasn't on a down week and wanted a recovery massage. Wasn't that, you know, it just feels nice. I would just want someone to rub my legs. It was my calves are tight, I need you to release them type situation. So I just went full on during this massage. Listen, they're not tight. You don't need to stretch. You need to do some strength work. Let me chat to you about your training history. And at the end, he was just like, yeah, thanks very much, and walked out the door. He goes straight into reception to book back in and asks to see anyone but me. It's not something that has thankfully ever happened much to me, but I was put out a little bit because I'm thinking, well, in my mind, I'd given you some really good information and I'd done it above and beyond what you'd come in to pay for effectively, you know? But anyway, long story cut short, fast forward a few months, he's been back and forth for these massages. And I go in and this guy's booked in to see me for an appointment. And I'm dreading it, thinking, oh, shit, what's going to go on here? Anyway, as soon as he walks in, he sits down, he goes, right, listen, let me just say, I knew a few months ago that you were right what you were saying. But I was so focused on my race, I didn't want to hear anything. I just wanted to do my race. But my race is done now, and I don't want to have that problems again. Now I'm ready to listen to you. So the silver lining to that story was there was a really positive outcome. But at the same time, the other way around was that I could have alienated this guy forever by trying to impose my beliefs on them. So the moral of that story is that if someone comes in to see me and all they've ever done is stretch, then I can't suddenly just throw it on them. Don't stretch, you need to do that. You know, I have to slowly work with them, drip feed that message across, plant the seed. And if they still need to continue stretching for a while, I need to support them and allow them to do that until they're ready to change, or I'm ready to just, because normally if you do that and you do support them, and, you know, as a really good friend of mine who works in chronic pain, and he's always told me that in that population, because of the nuances of that population, if he's got some education to pass on, the first thing he does is ask permission. You know, Rob, listen, what you've just told me, there's actually some stuff I know about or I've read about that I'd really like to tell you. Would it be okay if I pass that knowledge on? And if they say no, he just goes, no, leave it. Because what normally happens is the next couple of appointments when they come in, they go, listen, I've been thinking, I wouldn't mind listening to what you've got to say. And now it's received much better. Yeah. And because we don't work, we work with athletes, fit, healthy population who we think are robust and ready to accept whatever we say to them, then it can be easy, particularly when you're passionate about something, to say to someone, again, you get a 50-year-old runner in who for the last 20 years has done an ITB stretch before and after every run. And the first time they come into you in this unknown situation, with this unknown person, there's no relationship or trust being built up yet. And your first thing is, why are you doing ITB stretches? Who the hell told you to do that? You know, they do nothing. Do you know you need the weight of a car to be able to stretch that 1%? And when you move it, it goes back and recoils, and study X in 1998 says this and study Y says this in 2010. He's just going to look at you and go, thanks very much, I'm going somewhere else. But again, just foster that relationship and then drop the message in when they're ready for it. Yeah. You'll have a lot more success. So I've really changed my message now around stretching, rather than me trying to fight this battle head on. It's, look, if you want to stretch, but if you ever want to know why I don't think you should be stretching so much or where stretching sits better, let me know and I'll have a chat to you about it.
Definitely.
That's fair enough.
And last bit then, 3 bits of equipment that you Theragun to the head. You've only got 3. What are you going for?
So these are the self-help stuff, aren't they?
Yeah.
So I've gone for a left field one on the first one. The first tool you should use for self-help is a training diary.
Oh,
interesting. Nice. I like it.
I still log every training session I've ever done. Upstairs in the spare bedroom, I've probably got like 30 diaries from the last 25, 30 years where I've just kept my training history every year. And I do it for a few reasons. I'm old school. I still use pen and paper, but there's so many online, easy electronic ways to do this now as well. But I look for patterns. I look for patterns in what works well, what doesn't work well. I monitor things like how I feel after sessions. I monitor things like my response and my fatigue the next day. And as a therapist and a coach, if someone comes in to see me and can give me back that feedback, it makes my life so much easier and their life easier, because you won't know it, but you're putting down your own evidence, basically. So number one would be training diary. Number 2 would be an alarm clock, because I want you to really get good at trying to get your sleep back in order. There are so many things in our world where we have mixed evidence, controversial evidence, or we just don't know. If you think of, I've been in this game now quarter of a century almost, in one form or the other. And despite us doing, literally thousands of pieces of research on low back pain, we don't really know much more than we used to know about it. But the one thing that we have a ton of evidence on that we really, really should be pushing more is the power of sleep. You know, we do not have anything in our power, in our toolbox to help recovery more than sleep. The effects of sleep in a positive way and the effects of lack of sleep in a negative way are so well documented. So get yourself an alarm clock and learn to sleep properly. And then I guess the third one would be any type of educational resource, whether it's YouTube or a Facebook channel or something that gives you the current understanding of the tools. Because like stretching, I really don't have an issue with Theraguns or kinesio tape or foam rollers or compression garments or anything that fits that sort of little world, if you understand what they do and don't do. So, you know, without getting too technical on it, effectively what none of them are doing is breaking down any scar tissue or adhesions or releasing things or putting things back into place and out of place. What they're doing is having a positive effect on your nervous system and your neurophysiology, and it can often make you feel better. But again, this multi-million dollar pound marketing strategy to sell these things as gimmicks and gadgets and basically just make up claims or oversell claims. You know, there's which one was it? It was KT Tape, I think it was, one of the big American kinesio tape companies. They had one line on their box, which was basically just a fact they couldn't corroborate in science. Something like, this prevents injury. And they were sued in the States, and they ended up being, well, they weren't forced to pay, but they lost a case for something like $500 million, which effectively equated to anyone who'd ever bought a roll, if they wanted to, could claim their money back. Now, I never know how much ever got claimed back or how much people ever really got back or whatever. Probably wasn't worth the hassle for $5, but they just made a claim that they couldn't back up, and he got challenged and they lost. So most of these things either take a little bit of evidence and extrapolate too much from it, and then they have a really clever marketing campaign of just, you know, and again, you go to the National Running Show, go to the Tri Show, you'll just see it everywhere being sold as the magic elixir to everything. This will make you perform better than anything, and it'll stop you getting injured. It'll bulletproof you. So rather than say, don't use any of those things, learn a little bit about what they do and don't do, and then make your own judgment call on whether you can afford it, whether it's worth investing in. You know, Theraguns is a really interesting one. I would never put a Theragun on a patient in clinic. I think it's really lazy. But if a patient says to me that they like to pay for, you know, they don't have a load of disposable income and they struggle, but they want to afford a massage once a week, every week, each month, I'd rather you invest a couple of £100 in a Theragun and do it to yourself at home and save yourself tons of money in the long run. You know, but if you're telling me I can't train unless I've had a Theragun put on me because it breaks down the scar tissue in my calf, that's when now I'm starting to go, oh, alarm bells. I need to get that message out of you, because that's not true. So so again, I would have answered that a couple of years ago with, they're all rubbish, don't use anything, just, you know, do the basics really well. But I understand that probably pushes more people away than gets people to understand the actual nuance of the message. So read about it, learn about it, and then you'll understand the comfort zone of where these things should be placed.
Definitely.
Gotta say, I was not expecting
that was
those
good.
answers.
That was good. Cool. Well, that's a wrap for sure. Man, it has been awesome to talk to you.
Thank you so much.
After seeing you on Facebook for so long, I kind of feel like I know you pretty well. But yeah, no, that's great tonight.
Great.
So
Thanks for having me on.
We will put some links onto the website and kind of, you know, push that out there.
Thanks for having me on. You know, as part of a star-studded lineup this week, which I feel humbled to be alongside. Again, you know, if the one thing I do with this stuff is it gets harder as your following grows. But I've always made a point of, if anyone's got any questions and they ever want to message me with an injury and they just want to pick someone's brains on something, then I'll reply to everyone. It may not be an immediate response these days, unfortunately, but I'd rather take time out and give someone that little bit of direction, even if it's a link to something or a signpost to something, rather than see people waste time and not be able to compete and perform. So so if anyone follows me on social media and ever wants to get in touch, you'll always get a response.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Some people get a slightly shadier response when they're from the States trying to pick a fight, right?
Yeah.
I had to drop that in. It was
brilliant. I forgot. I'd forgotten about that.
The guy is crazy. He's actually crazy.
Well, again, you just learn on that one. Again, 5-6 years ago, I'd have ended up in some real lengthy battle, chucking science at him and all sorts of stuff. And now you just go, seen too many of your type, not worth it. I just sitting there going, why are you in a triathlon group? That's all I could think of watching him. Why are you in a triathlon group? You're showing an NFL ring. Which again, I'm not really sure if it was genuine or not.
No.
Telling me you've trained all these Taekwondo world champs or whatever it was. I'm like, why are you in a triathlon group?
Yeah.
Just didn't get it.
It was good fun. I really did enjoy that. I thought, wow, that is really giving it some to go on one of your posts and give it some large ones. I thought that was funny.
Brilliant.
No, it's good. Awesome, Mike. Have a good night. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
And hopefully speak to you soon.